Dear students, in this particular tutorial, we are going to learn the applications of open source and open standards in library automation and how things are changing with the advent of different open source software based product and more importantly emerging open standards. So before entering into details, we have to have an idea about what is open source software, how it is different from commercial software, what are the advantages of using open source software for different library services, what are different open standards available with us, how these are different from the proprietary standards, and how our library automation packages are making good use of open standard for developing different new services and interacting with different other software for developing a single window search services for different library materials. So let us go for the presentation mode. Now you see here that topic of the deliberation is open source and open standards integrated library system. We need to remember and we need to understand also that four fundamental factors are changing the way we go for different kind of scholarly communication process, and library is a very important part of a scholarly communication process. So four factors are fundamentally changing the way we interact, the way we exchange knowledge. So these are open and distributed information system, top in the pyramid, that is colloquially we call it internet. Then the entire internet is built on the top of open source software and open standards. For example, you are possibly viewing this particular video by using a web browser, either Firefox or Google Chrome, both are open source. So you are possibly using a Linux operating system, that's an open source software, and the entire internet is built on the top of an open standards called TCP/IP. So open source softwares and open standards are making the dream of a global world through communication on the top of the internet as a platform, and two beautiful products are coming on the basis of this platform. One is open access publishing, another is open learning resources. So you can understand that open source software and open standards are not only important for the different activities of libraries, but it is nowadays important for the development of entire internet and in that sense entire global communication process. So internet is acting as the platform for scholarly communication process. As I already said that library is an important part of scholarly communication process. Then it is built on the top of open source software and open standard. These are basically acting as ingredients for building services and utilities. Now as I said that two beautiful products are coming, open access publishing system, open learning system. So open source, open standard, open access publishing, open learning, all together we call them OKN, open knowledge movement, and we need to know before entering inside the code of library automation software packages. So first of all, free libre open source software, some people call it FLOSS in place of OSS, that is open source software. So free libre, libre is a French term, it is equivalent to free, available free of cost, but free of cost is not that important. It is basically emphasizing on the freedom attached with such product. Freedom to read, freedom to write, freedom to change, freedom to distribute, freedom to redistribute. So all kind of freedoms are associated with this particular kind of software, open source software. That's why some people also call it FLOSS, free libre open source software. Now if I ask you that what is a software, there are many definitions actually, and right from your school days you know a definition that a software is a group of related programs. Now if I ask you that what is a program, you are going to answer me a program is a set of logically related instruction. And what is an instruction? An instruction is a command given to the computer. But one particular computer professional, Richard Stallman, he asked the question, the definition of software, and he defined software as A software is a digital version of human knowledge. It's not only a mere set of logically related programs or instruction or commands. It's basically digital version of human knowledge. According to him, if I want to write an library management system software, then I need to know the library management system. If I want to write an accountancy management system software, then I need to know different aspects of accountancy, bookkeeping, double entry system, etc. So what he tried to mean actually way back in 1984, that every software is a product of digital knowledge, digital version of the human knowledge, and human knowledge are basically available in the public domain. So suppose you already you are a student of library science, so all the knowledge related to your cataloging, library management, classification, indexing, this knowledge is available, this set of knowledge is available free of cost in the public domain for anyone who is interested. So if on the basis of that particular knowledge you or I develop a software, am I ethically in a position to sell that software? Because 70% of my software actually based on the domain knowledge which is available in the public domain free of cost. So he asked that particular ethical question. But before going into the different views of different other persons related to open source software, let us discuss that how a software is built and why open source is important. So as I said that these are the definition of a software. But if we want to know that how a software is developed, then you need to know that every software or every program is basically a software is a logical set of related programs. So every program is written by using any available programming language like C, COBOL, Pascal, Java, Perl, PHP, etc. So when you are writing a particular program by following a set of logic, by using any of the available programming languages, that is called source code. Normally we people develop source code by using any text editor like Notepad or Gedit, etc. So that source code is basically human readable, follows almost natural like language, English like language. Programming languages are, although these are artificial language, but these are English like language. So this is human readable, but computer does not understand it. So why we do? We throw the source code through a compiler to convert that into binary form or machine understandable form. So source code is thrown to the compiler. It produced object code. Now object code, when interacted or integrated with the routine library operation, that actually develop an executable code or binary code. So when I am developing a software, I won't give you the source code. As a producer, I will sell you or I will give you the binary code or the executable code that you can run for n number of time. But the problem is that this particular process is irreversible. Say for example, you can always come from source code to object code to executable code or binary code, but if I give you the binary code, you are not in a position to go back to my source code again. So this process is irreversible. So there lies the business of software. So they develop software by using this particular process. They sell us executable code or binary code, but the moment I need some kind of change, some kind of upgradation, some kind of modification, I go back to the vendor, and vendor again charge me and recompile the project and give me the version 2 and version 3 and version 5 and so on. So they never give me the original source code. So this is basically the software industry is based on this particular fact that the entire process from source code to binary code is an irreversible process. So let me show you a very simple example. Say I have produced source code c1.c. You can see here it is available under the CPAT folder, and the name is given c1.c. It's a very simple program. It's a loop. I am within the loop. I am giving the loop pointer 0 to 9. That means 10 times it will print welcome to something. Now this is called source code. Now machine cannot understand it. So what I will do, after developing this source code, if I give the dir command here, you see this is my c1.c. The size is only 151 byte. Now I need to throw this particular source code to the compiler. So in case of Windows environment, operating environment, we have TCC, Turbo C compiler. Now I am throwing this to Turbo C. So you see here command TCC, I am calling Turbo C compiler, then throwing my source code c1.c. So if there is no error in the program itself, it will compile silently. Otherwise, if there is any error inside the syntactical error inside the source code, then it will report me that error lies in this particular line, so that I can edit and recompile. Now this particular program source code has no error, so it actually compiled silently. Now if I give again dir command, you see now the difference. Now c1.c is there, still 151 byte. Then it created an object file or object code c1.obj, just double of the source code, 372 byte. But here you see the c1.exe, this is executable code or binary code. Now if suppose I am selling this particular software to you, I will provide you the c1.exe and you can run that for indefinite period of time. Now say let us check. So suppose I have given you c1.exe, not c1.c or c1.obj. So now you can run that particular software either by calling c1 or c1.exe. Now you see it can produce a particular line 10 times. Now the moment you need to change this from 10 times to 20 times or 15 times, you need to come to me. And what I will do? I will simply change the loop from 0 to say 19, you need 20 times. So 0 to 19. So in this case, it will produce this particular line for 20 times. So I will change this in 1 second, then recompile it and sell you as a version 2, and you can run that program now for 20 lines. So in this way, software industry actually works. They do not give us source code. So we are not in a position to change anything. We have to take as it is basis the product what they have given. And that is true for the library automation software also. So as I said that Richard Stallman proposed a different proposition in defining a software. So he said a software is a digital version of human knowledge, and if it is depending on the human knowledge for developing that kind of a particular software, then we are not ethically in a position to sell that software, because the knowledge it has utilized to develop that particular software is already available freely in the public domain. Those are called community knowledge. Say for example, I have given you example the knowledge related to different activities of library. Stalwarts developed that knowledge for the last several hundred years. So we are utilizing that knowledge, we are utilizing on the basis of that knowledge we are developing new knowledge, and again that is available in the public domain for the future generation. But if a software has started selling that particular domain knowledge which is already available free of cost in the public domain, then it may create very dangerous situation. And what is the danger? I will be coming to that. But Richard Stallman, software engineer working at IBM, he left the job and also he was a researcher at MIT. Then he left the job and started a project called GNU project. GNU stands for GNU is not unique. So he felt that first we need to develop an open source operating system so that other software can be developed on the top of it. So Richard Stallman says that if this kind of software is not available free of cost to everybody, then there will be another division in the society that may call digital divide. And if it is so, then Stallman fears that a very few very powerful people would dominate computing. It will not be universal. In 1997, a group of people came. Actually, the name of the movement created by Richard Stallman was FSF, Free Software Foundation. But in 1997, a group of people under the leadership of Gus Perez, who previously headed the Debian project, and they developed a group called Open Source Software Project. And open source software is basically they have created opensource.org domain. You can go to this particular site and check their different kind of principles and practices. They have designed OSI certification, different kind of licenses, etc. So open source became very popular, the concept became very popular right from 1997 after the FSF movement created by Richard Stallman. So this open source actually according to the opensource.org, the open source software is based on the 10 parameters or 10 commandments like free redistribution. Every software should be freely redistributed. If I download a particular software, if I change something, I will have the power to redistribute to you or my other friends. Source code must be available with the system, so that anyone can make a change, anyone can recompile and reuse. Derived work, if I have developed another version of that particular software on the top of an open source software, so that is also should be considered as an open source. So you cannot sell a product which is already open source. Integrity of the author source code or original author's contribution must be maintained. No discrimination against persons or groups. No discrimination against any fields of endeavor. It should be supported by licenses. Normally these licenses we call GPL, GNU public license. These licenses gives you right to download, to change, to customize, to distribute, to redistribute, every kind of freedom associated with these licenses. There are different versions of open source licenses, but most of them are based on GPL. Licenses must not be specific to a product. The license must not restrict other software, and that license must be technology neutral. So these are the 10 commandments given by opensource.org group, and these are actually considered as the global de facto recommendations related to open source software. Now again if we again ask that can we categorize software according to their different intrinsic attributes? Yes, software can be divided into two groups normally according to their domain of activities. One is called, you already know, system software like operating systems, emulators, simulator, translators, etc. Others are basically you can also divide software as per their distribution policy, say whether a software is closed source or not. Closed source means source code will not be available, you will have only binary version to utilize it. Now closed source software can again be of two types: commercially available closed source and freely available closed source. So in our domain, one particular software we are very fond of, that is CDSISys. It's a freeware that is available free of cost, but the source code is not available with us. So this is a classic example of closed source product but freely available. For example, CDSISys. So closed source commercial products, you can have many instances like all Microsoft products, etc. Now other group may be the open source software. So here both the binary version as well as the the source code, both will be available with you. So you can change the source code, you can customize, you can go for extensive kind of change, recompile, and can reuse, redistribute that kind of software. So this is the power of open source software. You can see that what I have told you, software is developed divided into two groups. First, as per their domain of activities, system software and application software, or they can also be divided as per their distribution policy: closed source, commercial closed source, freely available source code, and open source. So open source can be both system software can be open source or application software can be open source. So for example, most of the Linux derivatives like Debian, Ubuntu, SUSE, OpenSUSE, Fedora, these are all system software. These are called Linux distribution. And different application softwares like database management system, MySQL, PostgreSQL, web browsers like Firefox web browser, Opera, Chrome, then different kind of library automation software, Koha, Emilda, NewGenLib, Evergreen. So open source software is now quite matured one. And as far as library automation process is concerned, we almost most of the cases the global trend is to utilize different kind of open source software and open standards. So now if we go for a comparative study between the closed source, freeware, and open source, here you see in case of closed source only binary file is available and you have to pay license fees, and often license fees are huge, and they also take AMC, annual maintenance contract. for upgradation and updation of the software. No source code is available, so you cannot customize, no scope for customization. Freeware, here only binary file is available, but freely, no source code, you cannot customize. But open source, both primary and source code, binary and source codes, both are available free of cost and extensive scope of customization. So this is another way of looking at the differences. Most of the cases these are the same, but here you see commercial software is also guided by the license agreement, but this licensing is very restrictive in nature. Freeware, normally they are not following any kind of license agreement, but open source software is also guided by the license agreement, but that license agreement gives you power to use, to change, to modify, to distribute, to redistribute the software for indefinite period of time, and that license is also mandatory. So commercial software, they are giving you licenses or they are giving you software against license fees and licenses, and that is very restrictive in nature. You cannot change, you cannot distribute, you cannot even install your procured operating system in more than one machine. So that kind of restrictive licensing is associated with commercial software. So open source software or FLOSS, free libre open source software, gives freedom to us to operate at the system level. Now in case of a commercial software, we library professionals are mere data entry operator. We don't have any freedom to change, to experiment, to measure different capabilities of given software. But in case of an open source software, we have freedom to operate at the system level. We can experiment, we can measure changes, we can apply our professional knowledge. It helps community computing, allows extensive customization through modifications of the source code. No two libraries under the sun are same. So a fit to all software may not may not be suitable for every library. So if I need to change something in the workflow, I can change, I can use, and the change part of that particular software or patch I can donate back to the open source community, so that in the next version or next release that can be incorporated. So it provides power to modify and redistribute, and it is associated with freedom to access, freedom to view, freedom to write, freedom to modify, freedom to distribute. So finally at the library end, we can achieve 3F: fun, freedom and fraternity. And most of the cases these open source softwares are distributed through a very powerful licensing system that gives power back to us, community computing, that is called GPL, GNU Public License. So many of the major software we are nowadays utilizing are based on open source software. So 95% of the servers are running some versions of Linux, Debian or Ubuntu or Red Hat Linux or Fedora, CentOS, etc. All are Linux distribution, distros or Linux distribution, and available free of cost to us, attached with attached freedom. So 95% of the world server are running some flavor of Linux. Apache web server, again more than 90% of the web server you are actually utilizing through internet are based on Apache web server. Mozilla Firefox is one of the most popular web browser in the internet, which is open source. Both the database management system like PostgreSQL and MySQL are utilized by almost every application software which require a backend database management system support. They are all using MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, etc. Lot many programming language environment like GCC, GNU-CC, C compiler, Perl, PHP, Java, Mathematica, you name it, we have it kind of thing. All kind of programming languages are available. These are all open source. But in case of library and information centers, LAMP architecture is very important. So most of our application software, what we normally utilize in case of our library services, for example, library automation software, different kind of e-learning software. So most of them are based on LAMP architecture. What does it mean? This LAMP stands for any flavor of Linux as operating system, Apache as a web server, MySQL, MariaDB or PostgreSQL as backend RDBMS, relational database management system, and Perl, PHP, JSP, etc. as programming environment. Here it is written wrongly as backend database management system. MySQL and PostgreSQL are basically backend database management system. Perl and PHP are programming environment. So many other domain specific tools we utilize in libraries are all are LAMP based. For example, you want to run a discussion forum or bulletin board in your library. So PHPBB, MiniBB, Discuss, these are all available as open source and all are LAMP based. You want to run a blog site for your library, WordPress, Blogger, these are all LAMP based and open source. In case of digital library, we have Greenstone, DSpace, Fedora, iTor, MyCore, ePrint Archive. Most of them are based on the same architecture, but in some cases database backend databases may be different. For example, DSpace is using PostgreSQL, Greenstone is using GDBMS, Greenstone Database Management System, and Fedora, iTor and MyCore, again these are compatible with both MySQL and PostgreSQL, and we have ePrint, which is essentially LAMP based architecture. In case of library automation software, we have Koha, Emilda, PHP My Library, WebList, etc. E-learning scenario, nowadays e-learning becomes very important, and e-learning and library services are integrating with each other. So Moodle, ATutor, OpenCourseWare, .lrn, Brihaspati, all are available as open source software, and Moodle and ATutor both are based on LAMP architecture. So if we, as we are very much interested with open source ILSs, so let us take a look what are the different open source ILSs available with us. You can go through the slide, and here you see in the top of the slide, you can see I have categorized. There are many open source ILSs available. I have categorized initially into the 4 groups: fairly matured, moderately matured, infancy, and experimental. So in the fairly matured group, I have given alphabetical. The order is alphabetical. In the fairly matured group, we have Emilda, we have Evergreen, Koha version 3.x onwards, and NewGenLib. So these are the fairly matured open source software in the domain of library automation. Moderately matured, that is still these are actually growing and developing. These are called Minisopli, Opals, OpenBiblio, PHP My Library, etc. In the infancy group, that means these particular softwares are recently developed. They are not quite matured enough, and they need more time and more years to become matured. These are Avanti, eLibrary, PHP My Bibli, PMB, Pythes. And an interesting group is experimental group. So everything is changing rapidly in the domain of library services. Now we are moving from ILSs to progressive ILSs to LSP. So two experimental ILSs the whole world is observing very closely. One is called Quali-Ole ILS, that's an experimental. Now on the top of Quali-Ole ILS source code base, another LSP, library service platform, is coming up. Folio, still the beta version is available, not the final release is still awaited. So Folio is actually, people are thinking that Folio will change the scenario of integrated library software, and this particular software is not called ILS, these are called LSP, library service platform. It can do many more things in compare with the typical ILSs. So Folio and Quali is very important, but that is the future. But again, a second kind of categorization I have done in the next graphics. So sustainable. So sustainable ILSs are two, both are matured enough, and lot many users are there throughout the world. So user base is quite good. So Evergreen and Koha is considered as sustainable. Emerging, very rapidly emerging software. Previously it was in infancy group. Now it has emerged as the most emerging or most visible software in the group of emerging ILSs. Now infancy or just release, still different kind of software like NewgenLib is quite matured now, and NewgenLib may be considered as just released, but user base is not, although NewgenLib is developed in India, but user base is not quite high. So NewgenLib is slowly decreasing, rather the user base. So that's why I have grouped or clubbed this particular software in the just released group, and many of the software emerged as very promising one like Emilda, but slowly this software become inactive because of the less number of users. So Emilda, ESPA Biblio, Open Biblio, PHP My Library, these are the inactive group of software now. So again, finally we can say that in the whole 14 to 15 open source ILSs are available, but Koha is version 3.x onwards, the very matured, supporting lot of open standards, lot of new services are coming every day. User base is quite considerable, lot many national libraries throughout the world, and big libraries in India like IIM Ahmedabad, ISI Kolkata, these are all utilizing Koha, and it's quite matured. But two softwares are improving every day. One is the Evergreen and another one is the PMB. So we need to have a close watch on these two software which are improving rapidly, and the two software Folio and Koali, which are basically experimental ILS, and every possibility is that Folio will change the entire scenario in the domain of library automation. So apart from library automation, we covered comprehensively. There are many other open source software we normally utilize in case of a library. For example, Officeworks, we use OpenOffice, LibreOffice for graphics management, image management. We can utilize Gimp. And graphics, we have also Irfan View, Picasa, etc. Text retrieval engine is very important nowadays. For example, almost all the open source software we talked about, at the back end they are utilizing some kind of open source text retrieval engine. For example, Koha is a very important software in the library automation domain. They are utilizing Zebra as a text retrieval engine. Similarly, Viewfind is a very important discovery system in the domain of library services. They are using Apache Solr. So these are the, apart from Zebra, Apache Solr and Lucene, DSpace is using Lucene, and the recent versions are using Apache Solr. So there are many other text retrieval engines, Suisi, OpenISys, HTDig, etc. So web authoring tool, when you are developing your library websites, there are HTML Pro, XML Maker, etc. So what not, you name it, we have it in the open source domain. One of the beauty of the open source software is that there are many candidate software. If you are utilizing Windows operating system, you have only one option for your office management, MS Office. But if you are utilizing open source operating system like any flavor of Linux, any flavor of Ubuntu or Debian or many other flavors of Linux, then you have any number of choices. You have OpenOffice, you have LibreOffice, you have StarOffice, you have ABI Word. So all every domain, every application domain are basically having number of candidate software, and after checking, measuring and comparing, we can select the suitable software for our library, and that is not possible in case of an open source software. Now open source softwares are available through different kind of repository. So one of the older repository, a very famous one, sourceforge.net. Suppose someone developed an open source software, they can open an account in sourceforge.net, they can upload that particular software so that other people can download. So you can search, you can browse. But recently two of the software, open source software repository is coming in a big way. One is called GitHub. So most of the library automation software or library related software we are utilizing, like Viewfind, Koha, DSpace, ePrint Archive, all of them have repository in GitHub. And another one is also coming in a big way, that is called GitLab. So SourceForge, GitHub and GitLab are mines of information from where you can get data and information related to different kind of open source software. So finally, a quick sum up, why we should people utilize open source software in our libraries. So OSS is typically created and maintained by developers across the institutional and national boundaries. So international fraternity can be developed against a particular open source software. For example, different Koha national groups are there: Koha India, Koha Pakistan, Koha Bangladesh, Koha Australia. So all these groups can exchange their knowledge, their experience with each other, and each one can reach. So OSS development process follows the famous Linus laws: release early, release often, and listen to user. Every year, two versions of Koha are released. One is in May, another was in November. So one is the nomenclature is also followed by the year and the month. Say for example, this year the LTS Koha release came 20.05. That means 2020 year, and 05 is the month of May. So again the next release will be coming in 20.11. So 2020 November. So in this way it is progressing. Quality, not profit, drives open source developer who take personal pride in seeing their working solutions adopted by others. And intellectual property rights to open source software belong to the community. So it is developed by the community, for the community, and owned by the community. And Eric Lis Morgan, who one of the great thinker or great open source enthusiast of our time, Eric Lis Morgan, he said once that in many ways I believe OSS development as articulated by Eric Raymond, is very similar to the principle of librarianship. Both camps hope the shared information will be used to improve our place in the world. Just as Jefferson's informed public is a necessity for democracy, OSS is necessary for the improvement of the computer applications. So it's a great quote from one of the great professionals of our time, Dr. Eric Lis Morgan. Views in favor of flaws in LIS. Many experts actually given favorable views to utilize flaws in different library activities. So one is that OSS licenses allow libraries to cut budget on software and use it for other areas that require more funds. Say for example, most of the cases, if you just imagine a college library in India, if they want to buy a software, they have to spend 2 to 5 lakhs as capital expenditure. Then every year 15% of the total cost will be spent as AMC. So it's not only a one-time capital expenditure, but it is the recurring annual maintenance contract or price you have to give if you are utilizing commercial software. But if you are utilizing an open source software, there is no software cost. If you can manage yourself, there will be no AMC, and that amount of money you can utilize for other necessary things in your library. Second important factors in favor of flaws in LIS is that OSS products is not locked to a single vendor. Thus, even if a library uses an open source software from one vendor, it might choose to buy technical support from another company or get it from in-house experts. Say for example, initially suppose you are not quite acquainted with installation of an open source automation software, library automation software like Koha. So you can take the help of any technical person, but that is not a recurring cost. You can take the help, you can install, you can host it in the cloud, and maintenance you may take up. So this kind of situation, this kind of freedoms are associated, and the entire library community might share the responsibility of solving information system accessibility issues. So one question is coming to your mind, that if I am not taking the help of any vendor, or if I am not buying any commercial software, so in case of any problem, who is going to give me support? Don't worry. We have a very active community in open source library automation software. You post your problem in any of the mailing list or discussion forum related to, suppose in case of, for example, in case of Koha, you are facing a kind of problem, you post it to the discussion forum. In the 24 hours, some of the library professionals or computer science professionals who are associated with Koha movement, they can help you, they can guide you what to do, how to do it. So OS is an economical alternative to libraries' reliance upon commercially software. It means that the real costs involved in the development, maintenance and use of open source softwares are lower than those associated with commercial software, like one-time capital expenditure, fees for upgradation, fees for maintenance, etc. So OS is very essential for a library because of the some of the inherent advantages associated with it. It is open, that is built according to open standards and as much potentially interoperable with any other softwares and system. Ubiquitously available to all libraries, capable of being tailored to suit the needs of the circumstances of individual libraries. Documented, nowadays documentation of open related to open source softwares is very comprehensive. For example, you can check the Koha manual, and modified and corrected more frequently in compare with the commercial software. For example, if you take the life cycle of Sol or Lipsys and Koha, you will be surprised that every version of Sol took almost 10 years to come up. Every version of Lipsys takes almost 3 years to come up, but every 6 months there is a version of Koha. So this is the level of progress made by open source software. Now another important concept is everything is not rosy, so there are views against flaws in LIS also. OSS generally demands higher level of technical knowledge to install and maintain it. Yes, true, we have to learn a lot of things. User who migrate to open source application face a steep learning curve. Yes, that is also true, you have to learn a lot. Offers new opportunities but also raises a number of challenges for the library and information community, and not an easy option for libraries as it requires them to take more personal responsibility for their system maintenance, and they have to carry the burden of development themselves or to turn to a commercial vendor to mold the product to their needs. These are all true, and but as I said that open source software is not just a software development model, it is also a software support model. If you are utilizing any software, you are facing some kind of trouble in installation, configuration and in post-run scenario, everywhere support is available. Support is often an email away. You just mail it, someone is going to tell you what you need to do. But another important concept is coming is the open standards. In fact, most of the cases open source softwares are based on open standards. These standards are available, these are not proprietary, these are available free of cost, anyone can utilize, and it actually supported by the global group of experts. Luckily or fortunately, right from the beginning, libraries always support open standards. So all kind of tools we are utilizing in our library, for example Dewey Decimal Classification, Mark 21 cataloging, ASCR 2 cataloging rules, all are considered as open standard. But lot many emerging open standards are coming. For example, Dublin Core metadata, MATS, metadata authority and description schema, MATS, metadata encoding and transmission schema. So all these are developed by Library of Congress as open standards, and any open source software can utilize this. In fact, you will be amazed to know when I will show you that how many open standards are actually supported by Koha. So a complete open standard has the following properties: it is accessible and free of charge to all, that is there is no inequality between the users and no payment or other consideration are required as a clause of use of the standard. It remains accessible. Once you use, you can utilize it forever. Owners will not limit access to the standard later, that is afterwards, and all aspects of the standards are transparent and well documented and freely available. Many open source software standards we are presently available in the LIS domain, and many of them have already been implemented in different library automation software and digital library system. Some of the very well known standards in case of library automation software is the Mark 21 family of standards for resource description. You please remember, Mark 21 is a family of 5 standards: bibliographic data standard, authority data standard, community information standard, classification standard and holding standard. So all are available as open standard. Mark XML is coming in a big way in place of ISO 2709 as exchange format. OIPMH as a metadata harvesting standard, SRU, SRW again developed by Library of Congress as standards for web-based distributed searching. ILSDI nowadays considered as a very important protocol or standards, open standard, which can make a bridge between an existing ILS and the front-end discovery interface. So, view, find and Koha can be integrated through the ILSDI protocol. Similarly, REST is also coming in a big way. So, REST based API, if a particular software is compatible with REST based API, so many other external software can interact with that particular software very easily. So, let us now have a look at that what are the open standards we are actually supporting here. So, if you go to the Koha manual, it is available under koha-community.org, and if you guys search by the standards there, you see all the modules like acquisition module is supported by EDI or ADFAC standard. Then administration is supported by lot many ISO standard in managing different languages and other things. In the cataloging, we are supporting most of the standards like ISBD standard, Mark 2 group of standard, generally Mark 2 bibliographic format and Mark 2 authority format. In case of global system preferences, in the ILL request, we are following a global ILL protocol, interlibrary role protocol. So, everywhere you can search, you will find some kind of open standards are available, particularly in case of web services, OIPMH, ILSDI, REST APIs, all are now supported by Koha. If you go to the again Koha manual and search other APIs and protocols supported by Koha, these are SIP2, that means when suppose you are going to convert your circulation process RFID compatible. So, many devices need to connect to Koha in real time. So, they are SIP2 protocol, which is again an open standards, actually provides the help. Then here you see in case of account, we have ADFAC. So, many of the things are available. You can go to the Koha manual and search that apart from standard, what are the other protocols and open API supported. Now, I am not going through it. Now, if I come to a installed version of any Koha instance, and if we go to the global system preferences and click web services, you can see by yourself that it supports ILSDI, integrated library system, discovery interface. It supports OIPMH. So, Koha now provides Mark 21 formatted data either in DC OIDC format or in Mark XML format. And recently the latest version of Koha supports many REST endpoints. So, these are some of the open standards recently supported by Koha. So, that's all about applications of open source software and open standard in developing ILSs, integrated library systems. So, integrated library services in the domain of library automation is changing again very rapidly. From ILS it is changing to progressive ILSs, then from progressive ILSs it is again changing to LSP, library service platform. So, both open standards and open source are going to play a very important role in the future development of different products related to library automation. So, that's all. Thank you very much.